Welcoming everybody to another episode of Play Like a Jet Live. Luke and Clay with you again. We've got a great show planned. Clay, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. It's hump day, a couple more days until the weekend. Enjoyed my Memorial Day weekend. I don't think you had that same weekend in Australia, but no, we're doing good.
What we're going to do today, guys, we're going to jump into some of the topical Jets news coming out of OTAs, some of the minor signings that have happened, guys who have made visits. And then Mark Schofield's going to come in, someone that knows a whole lot about the AFC East. We're going to do an AFC East roundup, talk about the quarterbacks in the division, which defenses we like, and some of the things like that. So, Clay, without further ado, let's jump into it. I wanted to start with Morgan Moses. So the former right tackle out of Washington. He was released by them about 3 weeks ago. It came out yesterday that he had a visit with the Jets and also then left the building and had a meeting with Chicago. We touched on him a little last week in the show. How would you feel about Moses, and do you think he'd be a good fit here with the Jets, and what would his role be?
I do. I mean, we've talked about George Fant in the past and what he brings to the table. I think they're kind of different. Morgan Moses isn't this athletic freak that George Fant, I guess, is. He's more of like a bigger presence, and if you can, we can just be a bully of an offensive line if you bring him in. I mean, I don't know exactly. We all expect that the team wants more athletic offensive linemen, but that might not be the case. We still don't know exactly what LaFleur and the offensive staff wants to do. So maybe they do bring in Moses, and if they bring in Moses, do they want to move George Fant to right guard, or do they want to just outright cut him? I don't think they would cut him at this point because I think his money's already guaranteed after June 1st. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would release him. So maybe they move him to right guard and then kind of just have the offensive line set with Becton, Barrett Tucker, McGovern, Fant, and Morgan Moses. Morgan Moses, what he brings to the table too, outside of his huge presence, he's also started all 16 games from 2015 to 2020. Like, when was the last time we could say that about an offensive lineman on the Jets outside of DeBrickashaw Ferguson? It seems like every other offensive lineman goes down for at least like 2-3 games at a time. So even though he's now 30 years old, or he will be, one or the other, for the 2021 season, I still love the presence that he would bring to the offensive line in terms of like a physicality, but also just being available for the offensive line, which we know is going to be important for a young quarterback like Zach Wilson.
Yeah, Moses was PFF's number 6 right tackle in the NFL in 2020, so still playing at a fairly high level. I think you're right, Clay. Whether they choose to kick Fant inside to guard, I think he's about 325, so he has a little bit of size, maybe a little bit undersized for the position though. But even if he's the best swing tackle in the NFL, I mean, I understand he's getting paid $10 million, but the Jets aren't in a cap crunch. They still have close to $30 million in cap space with only a couple more draft picks to sign. I'm more than happy protecting Zach Wilson and keeping George Fant as that swing tackle who can play both sides of the line. He played a little bit of left tackle in Seattle as well. Let's move on to a signing, Clay, that the Jets did make, and that was Ronald Blair, defensive end out of played his football with the 49ers with Robert Saleh in 2019. Didn't play a snap last year. Run us through a little bit about Ronald Blair and his career and why you think he might be a good fit here.
Yeah, so this one came as a little bit of a shock. Like, we've spoken about the defensive line, I feel like, quite a bit in these last couple months that we've been doing this, and how many players they actually have up front. Like, I'm not going to go through the interior alignment, but like Ronald Blair, he'll be one of those defensive ends, and now there's going to be a little bit of a rotation. Like, he's familiar with the Robert Saleh defense, and he actually flourished in that defense. Like, I'm looking at his stats, or I guess his run stop rate that Michael Nania from Jets X Factor put up. In 2019, he had a 10.6% run stop rate and 199 total snaps. And that was in the 100th percentile. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure when you're 100 out of 100, that's pretty good. So we know all the defensive ends in this group. Not many of them are very good against the run. Like Carl Lawson, that's not why we brought him in. We brought him in to get to the quarterback. Vinny Curry, like he's more of a pass rusher in a sense. And I wouldn't say he's great at either, but like he's still like he's better in terms of getting to the quarterback. And then same with Zuniga, same with Bryce Huff. John Franklin Myers, we don't know if he's going inside or out or both. So getting a guy like Ronald Blair who can help stop the run with an already great interior line with Quentin Williams and Foley Fatukasi who could stop the run, it gives them so many different rotations that they can look at. But what this does signal for me, Blair might not make the team. I don't know if his contract numbers came out, so it might not be guaranteed. He might not make the team. But if he does make the team, that's not looking good for either the third-round pick last year, Jabari Zuniga, or the beloved Bryce Huff, who was an undrafted free agent last year, because they have a lot of bodies in that group, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep them all.
Yeah, they were my two takeaways as well, Clay. You kind of both touched on them briefly. What does it mean for Zuniga, your Florida Gator? What's that going to mean for his playing career here in New York? And the other one is I liked adding the depth outside on the defensive line just so you can see Franklin Myers play inside more. I know he's had some success with the Rams playing that 4-3 defensive end, but he was so dynamic in that 3-tech role last year. And the more reps he gets in there with Quinton Williams and Sheldon Rankins, I think that's going to be better for the defense in general.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of expecting. I think they'll keep him inside because they do have a ton of bodies, even in the interior. And just to go over it again, Quinton Williams, Sheldon Rankins, Foley Fatukasi, Nathan Shepard, and John Franklin Myers. And then also, Ronald Blair, I don't think they would put him inside on passing downs because he's not really a pass rush specialist. And then Vinny Curry, he could occasionally get moved inside too because he is a bigger body for a defensive end. So they have so many different guys that they can play inside or out that I think they're just trying to give, because of the lack of depth at cornerback, I think they're just going to try to give Saleh as much as he can up front and just try to figure out, all right, what works? What can we kind of do to alleviate the pressure on our secondary? Because it is a very young, very inexperienced secondary that we know there's going to be a lot of issues back on the back end. I feel like we're going to see a lot of 300-yard passing games from opposing quarterbacks. So I think they're just trying to give him as many bodies as possible up front to just see, all right, what can I do to make it as easy as possible for the secondary? And I think that's what Ron Blair does.
Even when they were healthy in San Francisco, they loved to rotate bodies in and out of that defensive line. It was a staple of the Saleh scheme in that 4-3 front. So I think Ronald Blair just becomes another chess piece for Robert Saleh up front with the defensive front four. Clay, let's move to the OTAs. Obviously, neither of us are there, but there are lots of reports coming out, guys who are shining, guys who are struggling, who's winning the defense or the offense. Sounds like Zach Wilson's settling in, had another pretty strong day today. But the guy we wanted to focus on and kind of shine a spotlight on today is Michael Carter, the running back, our 4th-round pick at 107 out of UNC. Sounds like he's flourishing. Do you think, and it's early on and there's lots of bodies in that room, but do you think that Michael Carter may have the inside track to start for the Jets when it comes to week 1 at Carolina?
I think he will get the majority of the snaps. He's only a 4th-round pick. Normally you don't think 4th-round picks are instant starters, but you look at the running back room, who's going to be the guy that takes away the snaps? You got Josh Adams, Tevin Coleman, LaMichael P. Ryan, and Ty Johnson. Yeah, Ty Johnson and Josh Adams had some kind of bright spots last year in the very, very limited playing time that they had. LaMichael P. Ryan, he didn't have a great rookie season. And then Tevin Coleman, we've already spoken about that. He averaged less than 2 yards a carry last year. So I don't know if anyone's really going to stand in his way. And it seems like he's already getting some starting snaps in OTAs, and he's already connecting with Zach Wilson. I know there was one play in particular. I didn't get to see it. I don't think there's a video out there. I would like to see it, but apparently there was it actually wasn't even in the running game. It was in the passing game. The Jets defense blitzed heavy at Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson just kind of threw it deep from Michael Carter, and it was a perfect pass, perfect catch, and ended up being a touchdown. So, everything that he can provide, granted, he's not the greatest pass protector, but in terms of just being a good enough receiver and then a solid, just a solid running back, I think he will end up getting the starting snaps week 1. And then maybe Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson, I think would probably be the next two in that order.
Yeah, I was on the Play Like a Jet podcast with Scott Mason. If you aren't listening to it, subscribing, make sure you're doing that through where you listen to your podcast. And I actually had an episode on Michael Carter and his game. Like you said, I think he's going to be really good for the Jets on third down. His ability to make plays out of the backfield. I kind of broke it into two categories with pass catching backs. You have guys like Le'Veon Bell and Christian McCaffrey, who you want split out running wide receiver routes. And then you have guys who run really good Texas routes, option routes. And that's where I think Michael Carter falls. He's an above average pass catcher, and I think he can do a great job for the Jets in that role. It's a really fascinating group, though, with the running backs, Clay, because obviously at UNC, he was with Javonte Williams. It was kind of that thunder and lightning type of thing. With the Jets here, outside of maybe Josh Adams, the Jets don't have a power back. I'd say Ty Johnson might be the second back on their roster, and he has a really similar skill set to Michael Carter. Do you think that's going to be an issue without running between the tackles that well? Do you think Carter can do that at a high level? What's your overall take on how they all fit together, these pieces in the the running back room?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think obviously Michael Carter's not necessarily a quote unquote power back, but he runs in between the tackles very well too. And like his vision, as we've alluded to in the past, is very, very good for a young running back. Obviously he was a senior, but just coming in as a rookie, like his vision, I think should be up there. I'm not going to say the best of them because I don't want to put any pressure on him, but it is very good. And I think he can run in between the tackles and kind of make some guys miss because he does have that lower center of gravity too, which is always going to be helpful at the running back position. So I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. I do think Piron can kind of be that somewhat power back too. He was, I don't really want to even call him a power back because I feel like he fits more of that like Bilal Powell, who was like sort of that in between too. He wasn't thunder and he wasn't lightning. And I think that goes for Piron as well. So I don't think it'll be too big of an issue. And look at it, even with the 49ers, they didn't really have that power back unless I'm just forgetting one. Like they had McKinnon, they have Mozart, obviously Coleman, and they have Hasty. They've had so many guys. I don't even know if I can name them all, but off the top of my head, most of them, if not all of them, were more of that lightning role than anything else.
Yeah, talking about the running game a little bit, Clay, how do you think this Jets offense is going to unfold? Do you think it's going to be more of 49ers, 12 and 21 personnel, heavy sets, under center? Do you think they're going to transition to a Rams, also that under center but out of 11 personnel using the 3 wide receiver depth? Or do you think they'll run it out of shotgun? With the running back style, we have the offensive line play. Which do you think best fits the running back group and the offensive line?
Man, that's tough. I don't think they're going to go the 49ers route, if I had to guess. Oh, man, Nick is just coming up with that comment. I know you're a UF guy, Clay, but I have a hard time seeing Piron getting too many reps. Thanks for that, Nick. That kind of puts a damper on things. But no, I don't think they'll go the 49er route just because, I mean, I know they brought in Tyler Kroft. I don't see them playing 2 tight ends very often because we don't really have one that deserves a ton of snaps. And plus, I mean, we've talked about the receivers, and we have a lot of depth there. I find it very hard to believe that there aren't 3 on the field at most, like in majority of the snaps. With Denzel Mims, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, if we keep Jameson Crowder, Keelan Cole, like that's 5 solid receivers that should see NFL playing time right away. So I would think they would kind of go into more of that Rams, do more of 11 personnel, possibly maybe looking at like the Packers as well, like that kind of offense. So yeah, I don't think it'll be a carbon copy of San Fran whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the OTAs where we think the running back group is. And without any further ado, I wanted to bring in Mark Schofield, our guest for today. He writes for the Draft Wire with USA Today, contributes there. Former college quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, and also a Patriots fan. Mark, welcome in. How you going, man?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. It's great to be with you tonight. And yes, I am technically a former college quarterback, but as I've told people in the past, being the worst quarterback in all of Division III makes you the worst quarterback in all of Division 1, 2, 1AA, whatever you want to call it. I was the worst quarterback in all of college football when I played. And I can't hide from that history. I can't hide from that fact. So I just kind of own it. But I'm happy to be here. Excited to be with you guys tonight.
I love
Yeah,
it. That's a
appreciate the
great
time, Mark.
place. That's a great place to start, Mark. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks that we have in the AFC East and the landscape. Obviously, you're a Patriots guy. We're Jets podcast over here. So let's start off the rip with Zach Wilson. I know I read an article you did with DraftWire for USA Today, and you talked about how Justin Fields was your banging the table guy in the NFL draft this year at quarterback. How did you feel about Wilson in the process, and what were your thoughts on him as a prospect for the Jets?
Well, Wilson was my quarterback 3, and really all the guys in that top 5 were all very good to great quarterback prospects. And so the idea that one guy was 1, one guy was 2, one guy was 3, whatever, you can sort of stack them any way you want. There was a case to be made for almost any of these guys to be even QB1. I mean, I saw some people say Mac Jones deserved QB1 consideration, and while I wouldn't go that far, I understand why people liked all of these guys. I think the thing that made Zach Wilson the pick for the Jets, and why I do think it makes a lot of sense for them, and you have to understand that it's one thing to do sort of a big board for all 32 teams, so to speak. It's another thing to drill down on teams and what they have from a schematic need. Wilson fits the offense they're going to try to build, the offense that you guys were just talking about, that sort of Packers type offense, where outside zone, wide zone with boot action stuff off of that, with those 3-level reads off of that. That's what he was running at BYU this past season. That's the jump in production we saw from Wilson as a sophomore to Wilson as a junior was due in part to a shift to that sort of offensive philosophy. And then when you add in that, the things he can do outside the pocket, the things he can do off platform, the phrase of the week, so to speak, has been arm arrogance, and Wilson certainly has that. There isn't a throw he's afraid to make. There isn't a window he's afraid to challenge. There isn't a coverage he's afraid of or will shy away from. You need that at the next level. That's one of the things that I really do like about him. Are there things he'll have to develop? Certainly. There are things he has to clean up from a pocket management perspective. There are times where he locks on to reads and concepts when they're closed to him, and he needs to come off of those faster. But beyond that, I think he's a very good prospect, and I absolutely understand why the Jets made him the pick at 2.
Yeah, Clay, I have a question for you as far as we've touched on it a little bit. Zach Wilson, one of the things that he could get better at, and he didn't do a lot at BYU, was over the middle of the field reads. A lot of his stuff was outside the numbers, off of play action, deep posts, things like that with the crossing route as well. Do you think having Elijah Moore and Jameson Crowder are going to help kind of tidy up that picture of the middle of the field? And do you think he can get better and excel at that area, even though he didn't at BYU?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that was kind of more of the offense. Like they just wanted him playing outside the hashes and going towards the sidelines. Whereas they also didn't really have those receivers that could go over the field and make a difference. Where Elijah Moore, we've seen in clips, we've seen in all 22, like this kid is relentless and he does not care who's in his way. Like he's gonna go over the middle and try to make the catch. And more often than not, he comes down with the catch. So having a guy like Elijah Moore is going to help out immensely. Same thing with Jameson Crowder, one of the best slot receivers in the game. It still remains to be seen if he'll be a part of the Jets in 2021. But if he is, I mean, he's a great blanket, a security blanket to have for a rookie quarterback like Wilson. He's going to be over the middle too. And then you can't forget guys like Denzel Mims and Corey Davis. They're not afraid to go over the middle either. So I think they're kind of set up to where he is going to be a little more I guess he'll be more likely to succeed over the middle of the field, or maybe actually take chances whereas he didn't really seem to do that at BYU.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Zach Wilson, the jury's still out. We're looking forward to seeing how U1 pans out. A guy who we've now seen 3 years from is Josh Allen, who's down the road in Buffalo. Mark, he was terrific last year, coming off 2 really subpar years. I guess off the rip, do you think that Josh Allen is the quarterback we saw in 2020? Do you think it was more of an outlier year? Where's your head at with Josh Allen right now?
You know, I think given the year that he had last season, guys, and the strides he took in the passing game, I think we are perhaps seeing what Josh Allen actually is as an NFL quarterback. I do think the first 2 years, there were some ups and downs, and he had to sort of learn to balance what he could do with his arm and what NFL defenses are going to do against him. And that was sort of a feeling out process that he went through. There were times, and Benjamin Solak talked about this recently on the Pro Football Focus podcast. And again, it's that arm arrogance, right? Like what throws can you make? Which windows can you get away challenge? And which windows are perhaps something you should shy away from, some coverage concepts, some routes, some reads that you probably should have pushed the envelope on. He was struggling to find that balance in year 1 and year 2, and he really found that balance last year. You see some of the reads, the throws, the coverages that he was attacking. You look at that second game against the New England Patriots, right? When some of the throws he was making to the middle of the field, some of the throws he was making downfield, some of the throws he was making outside of the pocket. Those are throws that not too many quarterbacks in this league are even going to attempt, let alone hit on. And he seemed to be hitting those regularly. And so I do think that under Brian Daboll and the strides he made last year, we're starting to see what Josh Allen can be. The question is, though, what do defenses do against him now this season after what we saw last year? And can he sort of respond in kind? I think he can. If you saw last year, when he sort of went through 3 cycles last year, early in the season, teams like Miami, they played a lot of man coverage against him. They wanted to see if he could sort of attack man coverage, if he could make those throws. And he was hitting crossing routes. He was hitting deep routes. He was making throws with anticipation. So teams sort of change it up. You see that Titans game, that Kansas City game. They threw a lot of zone coverage at him. He needed to find time to adjust to that. And then it sort of took off that 49ers game when he was carving up zone coverage. Certainly the Denver game, that second Patriots game, he sort of started to figure it out. So that sort of second and third phase of his season makes me think that, okay, teams might throw something different at him next year, but he's going to be ready for whatever they do. And so I do think that, this is the Josh Allen that I think he was hopefully going to become if you're a Bills fan. We're seeing that play out over the past season.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately for Jets and Patriots fans, you could be right. He took an enormous leap last year. And to your point, Mark, I think Wink Martindale, who blitzed a hell of a lot at Baltimore last year, he met him in the playoffs. Josh Allen was the number 1 quarterback against the blitz in the whole of 2020. And they went away from that because they knew that Josh Allen was just carving up the blitz. So I think you're going to see some different approaches to attacking Josh Allen in 2021, and we'll see how he responds. Clay, as far as Josh Allen's accuracy, in 2019, 2018, he was, I think, 32nd and 31st in accuracy, according to Pro Football Focus. Last year, jumped all the way to 9th. Having Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs and guys who can get open quickly and separate at the line of scrimmage, how important is that for a quarterback as far as accuracy and making those windows a little easier to see?
It helps out immensely. It kind of takes a load off the quarterback, whereas you don't need to think as much when your guys are getting open within the first couple seconds. Like, where your reads are supposed to be, and he's an intelligent dude. Like, that was never the issue. It was kind of just like his accuracy and it's not being quite adjusted for the NFL game. But like, when you're now entering year 3, you have a great slot in Cole Beasley. You have one of the best receivers in the league with Stephon Diggs coming in. It's only going to help and just kind of alleviate the pressure in a sense for Allen and not having to think too much on his feet and on the run. So obviously, as we saw, Diggs was huge for Allen becoming. I think he was the runner-up for MVP, was he not?
Yeah, I think so.
So obviously, he was a huge part in that, but I don't want to discredit Allen at all. I mean, he had a great 2020, and I think he's going to change the minds of a lot of front offices moving forward too. I mean, I could be wrong, but he was a quarterback that had like really bad accuracy issues at Wyoming. So he came from a small school, had bad accuracy issues, but he had a lot of upside. And I think we might be seeing a difference in future drafts where it's like, all right, maybe accuracy can be fixed, because I was always thought of something that couldn't be fixed. Like that was my big thing with Christian Hackenberg. Like, he wasn't very accurate. It's not going to get any better in the NFL. And obviously he had way more issues than just that. But that was part of it, where it's like, now people might think like, okay, if he has all these different things that are good, maybe we can just focus on his accuracy and get him certain weapons or what have you, put him in the right offense and make him a quarterback that we could that's worth taking in the first round. So I think he is going to change the NFL in that aspect.
And I think
he was quarterback 5. Sorry, go for it, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of to Clay's point there, we might already be seeing that sort of play out because, the year after that, Justin Herbert, right? The accuracy numbers, they weren't a concern because of Oregon's offense. It was really a lot of screens and bubbles and things like that. But big, athletic, big arm, like sort of seems like Josh Allen. He goes, has the season he does, offensive rookie of the year. And then this past draft cycle, Trey Lance, right? A lot of the knocks on Trey Lance are the accuracy numbers, the ball placement issues, struggles with, putting the ball where it needs to be. His accuracy numbers, according to Charter data, weren't anywhere close to some of the other guys. but he goes third overall because of that upside that Clay's talking about. And it might be we're already seeing the start of that sort of Josh Allen. Okay, we missed on Josh Allen. We don't want to miss on the next Josh Allen. So we see an athletic, toolsy guy that maybe doesn't have great accuracy numbers. We can scheme that stuff up now on the next level. So we'll take a shot at those guys. Lance, at 3 overall, Herbert at 7 overall. We might be seeing that now.
Yeah, I think the floor is lifted so much with a guy like Trey Lance and Josh Allen. Even though Allen was a subpar passer in 2019, his legs and ability to scramble and generate plays, they kept Buffalo in conjunction with their defense competitive through that whole 2019 season and got them in the playoffs. So I think you're definitely seeing a revolution similar to with the offensive coaching and the Sean McVay kind of influence. I think you're seeing that with Josh Allen on the quarterback market. Let's transition, guys, to Miami Dolphins. So had a really interesting quarterback room last year. Obviously, Ryan Fitzpatrick played a lot more snaps than they were probably hoping. But the guy who's now the incumbent, Clay, Tua is a guy that hasn't got the tools necessarily of a Josh Allen. He struggled a little bit in year one. Did you like Miami's decision to stick with him because you haven't really seen a lot of Tua? Would you have stood pat at number 3 before trading down and looked to take a toolsy quarterback? Where would your head have been at if you were the GM of the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, so the first thing that goes through my mind is when the Cardinals had the first overall pick in 2019. I thought the smart thing to do was to stick with Josh Rosen. You took this guy, you traded up for this guy nonetheless in the top 10. Stick with him, draft a Nick Bosa or Quentin Williams, and just go on from there. Obviously, the Cardinals made the right decision. Josh Rosen is barely in the league at this point, and Kyler Murray is looking like a future star or current star. So with that being said, I still think the Dolphins made the right decision keeping Tua. They have a ton of draft capital. They went 10-6 with Tua and Fitzpatrick last year. You have money, use your assets to just build around this kid. You drafted him in the top 5. Don't just give up on him just yet. And it's not like it's like the old coach that drafted him. It's not the old GM that drafted him. It's your regime. So stick with your guy, build around him, and actually hope that it works. Well, not hope, because I don't really like using that word, but just build around him and then make it work. You'll make it work if you. This kid is a good quarterback. We saw it in Alabama. No, he's not the big-armed, speedy guy like Josh Allen, like you mentioned, or Trey Lance. But he's smart. He's very accurate. People were comparing him to Drew Brees, even though I thought that was a little much. People were comparing him to Drew Brees coming out of college. So I think they did the right thing. Trade back, accumulate even more draft capital, and just build around this kid. I think they kind of messed up in a sense of not really attacking the offensive line. I thought that would have been a little better for them. I think Sewell would have been a little more important than Waddle. But I'm not to discredit Waddle. I think Waddle's going to help out immensely too. Obviously that's his former teammate at Alabama. Waddle might have been the Heisman Trophy winner if he didn't get injured. So he's a great talent in himself. But like Mark said, he needs to handle pressure better, and the best way to handle pressure is to get the big man up front to kind of make it easier for him.
Yeah, Mark, James just flashed a comment that Waddle, his pre-draft comments, was talking about rather catching balls from Mac Jones than Tua. I think some of that is helping his quarterback in the draft, actually going through that process and helping him get drafted higher. If you were taking a quarterback right now and you had Tua on the board or the guy that New England just took at 15, Mac Jones, let's transition to him. Which one would you choose right now, 2021, to lead your franchise? And then after that, talk to us a little bit about how you felt about Mac Jones as well.
Yeah, I think given what we've seen from Tua so far in the NFL, the concerns about handling pressure, the concerns about knowing the playbook and things like that, and then what you have from Mac Jones right now, I'd go with Mac Jones, and that's not just a Patriots homer move. You've got 1 year in the NFL. You've got an incumbent rookie. So you've got more cost-controlled years of Mac Jones than you do Tua. You're facing an earlier decision on that sort of fifth-year option. You're facing the idea that, look, Bill Walsh famously said quarterbacks have to figure it out by year 3. You're already down 1 year of Tua. You've got 3 full years of Mac Jones. And so that's sort of a tiebreaker for me. I think they're both good quarterbacks with potential. The question with Mac Jones, I think, and this is part of the reason why he was my QB5, I was higher on the other 4, was does a quarterback with his skill set is that kind of player somebody that can thrive in today's NFL? Because it does seem like this game is trended towards mobility and athleticism at the quarterback position rather than the more statuesque pocket passer type. Now, there's certainly a way in which Mac Jones can succeed at the next level. He could win with his mind. He could win with pocket footwork. He could win with pocket awareness. But the model for that is a Tom Brady, is a Peyton Manning. And you're talking about two of the best to do it of all time. So that's sort of a tough needle to thread. I think he showed you some of that at Alabama, showed you some pocket toughness, showed a good understanding of sort of protections and, blitz pickup schemes. And when there were weaknesses in a blitz package or weaknesses in a protection scheme that he had to bail the pocket early on, if he could continue to stay ahead of those with his mind, he could survive. Certainly accurate. But the other thing to keep in mind is this. A lot of people have said, it's the perfect scheme fit, right? Mac Jones to the New England Patriots. There's going to have to be some tweaks to that playbook. We know the Patriots love to run play action, of course, and Jones thrived in play action last year. He had I think the highest number of play action attempts according to Sports Info Solutions, but his yards per attempt was much higher downfield than, say, Cam Newton was last year. Obviously, the RPO game, that was a heavy RPO system in Alabama. Cam Newton had 18 RPO passing attempts last season. That was up from Tom Brady's 8 the year before. Like, the New England Patriots aren't an RPO-heavy team. So if you're going to want to get him into the offense and get him into the lineup and do things that he's familiar with, you're going to have to do some things as Josh McDaniels that are going to be a little bit different than you were doing last year with Newton and years prior with Tom Brady. So there will need to be some tweaks. Can it work? Sure. Am I going to bet on it? Not yet.
Mark, I want to stick with you here as our Patriots guy. You just mentioned how Mac Jones is extremely smart between the ears. He's very accurate. These are reasons that a lot of quarterbacks sit when they first come into the league. He seems like he's more advanced than a lot of quarterbacks. With that being said, what's your take on starting him versus Cam Newton? What would you do if you were in charge of the Patriots? How would you handle that quarterback room in that situation?
Yeah, Luke, it's a fascinating question. And I've traditionally been the guy that's like, you could sit and learn. You could take some time. You can learn from the sidelines with a clipboard in your hand. But the more we've seen this game evolve, the less I've become sort of entrenched in that position. And I think when you also consider the financial implications here of you have this cost-controlled player for 4, potentially 5 years, you've got to maximize that value. You've got to get him game reps. You've got to get him on the field as soon as you can. I do think we see Mac Jones sooner rather than later. The interesting thing about where New England is, you talk to people in that building, and they will tell you they feel like they can be competitive with the additions they've made, with the free agency spending they made, with the players that get him back like Donta Hightower. They can be competitive now with Cam Newton. They just need Cam to be maybe a 2017 version of Cam. You're not getting 2015 Cam ever again. I think that guy's gone. But if you could get 2017 Cam or something approximately close to that with the talent you have around him and this defense not being as bad as it was last year, you can be competitive. But they still had an opportunity sitting at 15 to address the future beyond Cam Newton. Because let's say Cam pans out. He's on a 1-year deal. They're probably not going to pay him, though they wouldn't want to pay him what he'd approach on a market valuation standpoint. And so they wanted to have a guy in position. And if it turns out that, look, Cam's just not who he was anymore, and last year was the Cam Newton we're going to get in 2021, they then have an opportunity to get Mac Jones into the starting lineup. So I do think we see Jones at some point this season. I'd like to see him at some point this season. I think they're going to start with Cam and hope that they can get a better season out of him. Maybe COVID had something to do with it. Strange set of circumstances of the training camp. He signs late. So I think their plan will be start with Cam. Hopefully they can sort of be better. And if not, they're going to get Mac Jones out there early to start the clock on the sort of next QB cycle.
A really great discussion about the quarterbacks in the AFC East. A lot of young guys. No one is kind of past their third year in the league. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that story unfolds. What I wanted to finish with, guys, was just whipping around the AFC East and looking at the rosters, maybe excluding the quarterback position now. So, Mark, if you want to look at this through the Patriots lens, let's start with the Jets. Clay and I talk about the Jets a whole lot, obviously. From the outside looking in, what are the strengths of this roster? What are you looking at as this Jets team in 2021? Who are they? Are you concerned? Do you think the Patriots are going to handle business fairly easily? Where are you at with the Jets from a Patriots perspective?
Well, look, games against the Jets as sort of a Patriots fan and observer, they always terrify me. Divisional games are always tough. I mean, it doesn't matter, how the teams might look on paper. These are teams that know each other. These are coaching staffs that know each other. Even though, look, you get Robert Saleh coming in. Like, these are teams and organizations that are familiar with each other. And I love what the Jets have done this offseason. I mean, granted, Zach Wilson was my QB3, but people had him QB1, QB2, wherever you want to rank him. I think he made a ton of sense for the Jets. I love Elijah Vera Tucker. I absolutely love that selection for them, because now you're looking at potentially a situation where you've got that left side of the offensive line locked up for maybe the next decade. Mm-hmm. And I know people have said, how could you trade up for a guard? You got to protect your quarterback. I mean, I just put a piece up today on Burrow, Tua, Herbert, how some of those guys struggled against pressure, whereas Herbert, one of his best games last year, whether it was just pure production numbers, whether it was EPA per play, whatever, was when he was pressured the most. You've got to be able to handle pressure, but you've also got to be able to protect your quarterback. And I think the Jets, getting Elijah Vera Tucker, what they did was a very smart move to lock down the left side of that offensive line. I love the Elijah Moore pick. I came in, you guys were talking about what he offers to the offense. If you start thinking about schematically those boots, those rollouts, those flood concepts, getting that backside slaughter, that backside Z working across the field on that over, that crosser, and then attacking that route, that's Justin Jefferson money. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you can build an offense around. And then, of course, all those change of direction routes, the pivots, the whips, the mesh returns and stuff like that. That's those option routes. Those are how you move the chains in this era on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. He's going to be Zach Wilson's best friend. So I love what they've done this offseason. Are there concerns? Yeah. I mean, the right side of the offensive line, there's still some questions there, although with the addition of Elijah Vera Tucker, you can fill some stuff in there. I love the Carl Lawson side, and I think the defense is a little bit better. If you get a healthy Chris Herndon for 17 games, that will be a huge part of this as well. I really like Christopher Herndon. I'm a big fan of his game. I thought he showed a lot of flashes and promise at times. So this is a roster that, look, are the Jets going to be a playoff team this year? Probably not. But have they built something where 2022 and beyond, this could be a team in contention year in and year out? Absolutely. And so I think the future of this Jets organization very much terrifies me as a Patriots fan.
I gotta say,
go for it.
Yeah, Luke, before you go any further, I gotta say, hearing that from a non-Jets fan sounds so good.
I mean, as a Patriots guy, I knew these days were coming when, the other three teams were going to be a lot better than the Patriots faced over, say, a good portion of that Brady Belichick run. And you look at Josh Allen, what the Bills have built. You look at what the Dolphins have started to put together. Obviously, Tua is a big question mark. And then, like I just talked about with the Jets, there could potentially be three better teams than the Patriots in the AFC East, maybe as early as next season. I mean, a lot of it all depends on these young quarterbacks and how they pan out. But I'm terrified of what the Jets are building. I think Miami's building some strong stuff down in Miami. And look, the Bills made it to the AFC Championship game, and they pretty much brought the band back for the next season. So if Josh Allen stays good, that's going to be a tough team too.
Okay, Clay. So I think we'd both agree that the biggest weakness on the Jets roster is the cornerback position.
Yeah.
The biggest strength is the defensive line. Taking away those two groups, so let's just throw them out the window. Where do you think the biggest strength and weaknesses outside of those two are for the Jets?
It's weird to say this, considering how poor this group has been for years, but the receiver position, I would say, is the strongest. They have maybe they're not top heavy, maybe they don't have that superstar or a Pro Bowl receiver, but getting Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, I think leaving Gase's system alone is going to make him better, and that's not even including the natural progression he should see. And then you have Jameson Crowder, we've already hit on him. Elijah Moore, we've hit on him and what he can bring to this offense. They have a lot of good depth and quality starters in this league. At least we hope so with Mims and Moore. But I honestly do think receiver is their strongest position. And then in terms of weakest, I would probably go with linebacker. Linebacker, offensive line, probably linebacker. Just because, actually, maybe running back. they still have some weak positions. I'll go with a linebacker just because I do really like Michael Carter and what he can bring. So linebacker, I mean, you're getting back C.J. Mosley, but he's only played in 1.5 games since he signed that massive deal going into 2019. He missed all last year because he opted out, and then he was constantly hurt in 2019. You bring in Jarrad Davis. While we think that he'll be a better fit in Robert Sala's defense, going from a 3-4 to a 4-3 linebacker, we still don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, he was a first-round pick. Yeah, he's super athletic, but we still don't know what he can bring because he wasn't all that good in Detroit. And then the other linebacker, I don't know who it is right now. Blake Cashman, but he's another guy that's constantly injured. So I'll probably go with linebacker as the weakest outside of the cornerback position.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I think linebacker and maybe the right side of the line are the biggest issues still. Mark, okay, let's talk. We talked a lot about the quarterbacks. In the AFC East, out of Miami, who were, I think, a top 3 defense in the NFL last year, and then Buffalo, who were amazing in 2019, but regressed significantly last year. Who do you think has the best defense in the AFC East? Let's take New England out of the picture for a moment. But would you be more worried about Buffalo's defense or about Miami's?
I mean, I think right now, given what you see on paper, it's Miami's defense that scares me more. I think it starts in the secondary, interestingly enough, but I really do like what they've built. It's very similar to, what Bill Belichick has built in New England in the secondary, and Brian Flores obviously learning from Belichick, the ability to have a number of options at the cornerback position to then try to play matchups from your perspective. And we've always seen that from Belichick, right? Sometimes you'll take a team's best receiver and put your best player on them, or maybe that matchup isn't something you like. So you take your second best corner, put them on them, dedicate some safety help. And then you look at Byron Jones, you look at Eric Rowe, who's a slot / a safety type player. You look at Xavier Howard, you've got matchups that you can play in the secondary. And then the addition of Julio Phillips, who I do think that if healthy, he's the best pass rusher in this draft. Provided he stays healthy, it gives them a lot up front. They've got some pieces up at the linebacker spot as well as along the defensive line. I do think that defense is extremely talented. Yes, the Bills have made a lot of additions up front. They added 2 guys to this draft cycle. They're excited about A.J. Epinesa. He's sort of rebuilt his body a bit. There's been some discussion during OTAs about how he's carrying muscle mass better, and they're excited about what he can do. Tre'Davious White is an extremely talented corner, one of the top 5 in the game. But right now, it's Miami's defense that scares me a bit more.
Clay, who's got a better front 4 out of those 2 groups? Would you take Buffalo's with all the work they've put into that, or would you take Miami's with Christian Wilkins, Ogba, and now Phillips? Who do you think has the better front 4?
I think because I wasn't too high on Russo and Basham, I'll probably go with Miami because I do like Christian Wilkins, and I do like Christian Wilkins, and I really loved Jalen Phillips. It was just a matter of his injuries. I mean, he actually retired from the game of football. He didn't quit; he retired from the game of football. I think he had ankle injuries. I believe he had a wrist injury, and of course concussions. So the fact that he had to retire in college is never a good sign. But when he's on the field, when he is healthy, he just brings something that not a lot of guys in this past draft could bring. He's athletic, he's big, he's strong, he's smart. Like he has a plan with his pass rushing. So I think I would go with Miami, and with that secondary, if Phillips is what I think he can be, it can be a scary duo. And I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the starting snaps and he's actually, let's say he plays 75, 80% of the snaps. I wouldn't be shocked if he had 10 sacks this year. I do think he's that good, and I think he can do that as a rookie.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to make Zach Wilson's life so difficult is looking at some of the defenses around the AFC East. They are really talented. But how I wanted to close out the show, Mark, let's transition to your New England Patriots. As someone who's a fan of the organization, but also a former player and an analyst, what do you expect from this group in 2021? Obviously, a lot of opt-outs last year. You had Cam Newton playing his first year in this system. What are your overarching hopes, and what do you think this team can be next year?
I mean, I think this team can be competitive in the division. They're going to have an easier schedule. I said before last year that, look, Belichick could do the best coaching job of his life, and this could be a 9-7, 8-8 kind of team. You looked at the teams they had to play, the quarterbacks they had to face. They've got an easier schedule this year. Now, obviously, look, there's going to be some showcase games. There's going to be some tough games along the way. There's going to be 6 tough divisional games, of course, like we talked about tonight. And so could this team contend for a division and maybe go 10-7, 11-6? Maybe. But it all comes down to the quarterback position. And they've made a lot of improvements. They've added weapons. We expect this to be like you guys were sort of talking about earlier with the Jets. We expect this to be a heavy 12 personnel team with Hunter Henry, with Jonnu Smith. They've made acquisitions of the receiver spot. There's the Julio Jones rumors floating around there. They haven't been shy about spending money and acquiring assets, but you need the quarterback position to be sorted out. You need the quarterback position to be better than it was last year. Cam Newton was not the answer, but the hope inside the building is that Cam is not the guy we saw last year, that he's a better quarterback, that he can be effective in this offense, that they have weapons around him now, that some of the issues with ball placement and decision-making and things like that will be sorted out because of what they can do schematically around him. If that does come together, this could be a team that I don't know if they're the best team in the division still. I mean, you look at Buffalo and what they brought back, but they could, make a run at a wild card spot, maybe make a run at the division if a couple breaks go their way. But if Cam isn't that guy, and they do have to transition to Mac, and you're talking about a rookie quarterback that, yes, is a good college prospect. It was a great college quarterback, but there's going to be bumps along the way. It might sort of reset the timetable. They might be looking at more of a 8-9, 7-10 kind of season if they have to make that transition to Mac early. So the hope is Cam sorts things out. They find ways to get Mac involved. Maybe they can start him late in a game where it doesn't really matter for seeding or something like that. And they make a run to the playoffs, and who knows what happens in the postseason. Realistically, that's asking a lot for a quarterback that has struggled, that hasn't really had a good year since 2017. And you're still sort of wondering, what are we going to get from Cam Newton? So the hopes are reasonable. The expectations less so. And I just hope for a better offensive product this season than we saw last year.
Last one for you, Mark. J.C. Jackson, a bit of a polarizing player around the NFL. Some people think he just had a little bit of luck's a difficult word to use, but a luck with his pick production last year. Do you think he's an emerging great top 10 potential cornerback, in the NFL? Or do you think last year was a bit of an outlier for him?
I think he's a very talented corner, Luke. And I do think he's a potential top 10. I don't want to say top 5, but top 10 type player. And I do think the fact that there were Stephon Gilmore rumors about him potentially getting moved and the Patriots perhaps using him as part of a package to get up in the draft for a quarterback, it tells you what they think about J.C. Jackson. One of the things that Jackson does well, beyond sort of the technique and the trail technique coverage, and his ability to, locate the football when he needs to and play through the pocket when he can't locate the ball, he has a short memory. And you need that as a cornerback in the NFL. And Jackson, you think about, for example, that game against the Jets, the Monday nighter, right? Where he got beat early in the game, but then he comes back and Flacco made a bad read, and it's J.C. Jackson there with the interception. That short-term memory, that ability to sort of forget a bad play and put it behind you, you need that as a corner. Jackson certainly has it. So I do think he's a potential, again, maybe top 10 corner in the league. But when you look at the rest of the stuff they're building around him in the secondary, a top 10 corner plus the rest of the secondary is pretty good. Now with Jackson and Gilmore, that's potentially a great cornerback tandem if Gilmore can stay healthy, if Jackson can stay consistent. But I do think he's a very good corner in the NFL for sure.
Clay, let's finish on this. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you one more question. So week 4, obviously, Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
Bucks, Patriots. 1, is Mac Jones starting by then? 2, are you going with Tom Brady or your Patriots?
I would be surprised, guys, if Jones was going to be starting by then, just because I don't think you want to put him in that situation. Now, maybe look, one of my favorite movies of all time is in books too, is For Love of the Game, right? That Kevin Costner baseball movie where he's an aging pitcher trying to throw a perfect game in Yankee Stadium. And in the end, the Yankees throw a rookie up there to break up the perfect game because he's young, he's dumb, he doesn't care about the moment. And maybe that would be Mac Jones, where it's like, whatever, it's Tom Brady, I don't care. I doubt it. I don't think they want to put him in that situation. I think they try to ride things out. If it's not going well with Cam, they probably try to ride it out to get past that, just to say, look, we don't want to throw Mac Jones into that environment. So I think it's unlikely he's starting by then, unless of an injury or it's just, look, the offense is putrid, so we got to make a change. Barring those kinds of situations, I think they're going to try to get past that game before having to put Mac Jones into the lineup. Look, you see the Patriots banners behind me. There's a Tom Brady signed helmet behind me. Like, look, I'm a Tom Brady guy. I get it. And I'll be cheered for him at the pregame ceremony. I'll be happy for him, to see the crowd's reaction. But once the ball is kicked and, this game kicks off, he's the other quarterback of the team I'm hoping that the Patriots beat. And so I hope he has another great year. I hope he has another great run. As a guy that's 7 months older than Tom Brady, it warms my heart to see him playing at this age. Gives old guys like me hope that maybe when I go play a little flag football or softball or something, that I'm still going to be able to make some plays. So it's nice to see that. But no, week 4, I hope he throws 5 touchdowns and 5 picks and they lose.
Clay, this is how I want to finish. We did a prediction show a couple of weeks ago after the schedule release, and you and I both tipped New England to sweep the Jets, but we also mentioned we thought they'd be pretty close games. These teams were fairly evenly matched. Maybe Bill Belichick versus a rookie quarterback was the deciding factor. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, what do you think the season outlook is for the Jets versus Patriots in that series?
I've kind of eased up, and maybe I think a split. I think will end up happening. I think the Jets will still be in that 7-win range, but I think a split is definitely possible. Because I don't know, I think the Tom Brady and the Patriots have kind of just hurt me so much that I automatically just think that every single game has been a blowout when that's just not the case. Like a lot of their games have been very close, and the fact that they were actually pretty close last year, and I forget, was it like a missed field goal or something crazy at the end, whereas. That was with terrible quarterback play. Whereas if we just get adequate quarterback play out of Zach Wilson and just not, this is actually somewhat kind of protection for our quarterback, I think the Jets might be able to sneak 1 out of the 2. I'm not going to get my hopes up because we all know what Belichick can do against rookie quarterbacks. So I'm not going to get my hopes up, but I think they can get 1.
Well, let's hope as a Jets fan we can at least get 1 against the old enemy. That will do us today for our AFC Roundup show. A huge thank you for Mark for joining us. Really appreciate it, Mark. Your Twitter handle's on the screen. I know you're doing some contributing for DraftWire and USA Today. Where's the best place for people to find your work and everything you're doing with the NFL?
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. This was a blast. You could follow me on Twitter at Mark Schofield, USA Today. I'm doing a series right now on pressure on quarterbacks. First piece came out today on how the 3 rookies last year, the 3 first-round rookies handled pressure and how Burrow and Tua certainly need to get better at it. Next thing, we're going to be looking at the 2019 class and show was there improvement and was there sort of a roadmap for the incoming rookies in terms of handling pressure. And I'm going to work my way all the way up to the old guys. I'm also doing some QB scouting for the next draft class, but on Twitter at Mark Schofield, the best way to find me. And guys, thanks again. This was a blast.
I appreciate it, Mark. Make sure you're following Mark and make sure you're following us and everything we're doing at Play Like a Jet, whether it's over on Play Like a Jet's YouTube channel, and make sure you check out Pace's Playbook, all the film analysis videos we have. Make sure you're watching and listening to Scott Mason and his podcast. Subscribe and download on Apple iTunes and everywhere else you get your podcast. Thanks for joining us again, Clay. It's been a pleasure as always. Mark, thank you again. Guys, we'll see you next week, 7:15 Eastern Wednesday nights. That'll do it for Play Like a Jet Live.